In a world that worships sound, where noise has become our native language, silence feels like a stranger. We fill every moment with voices, messages, movements. Even our prayers are loud. But silence, true inner silence, is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of depth. Meister Eckhart once said, "There is nothing so much like God as silence." And in this, he wasn't speaking in metaphor. He was pointing to the very nature of divinity, ungraspable, formless, beyond all concepts, and yet profoundly intimate. Silence is not a void to be avoided. It is the sacred space in which the eternal whispers. When the mind quiets down, something else begins to emerge, something that does not think, does not strive, does not chase. It simply is. And in this being, there is a knowing without words, a clarity that cannot be taught, only revealed. God or truth or pure awareness, whatever name you give it, is not out there waiting to be found through effort or belief. It is here, now, humming softly beneath the surface of everything. But to hear it, we must become still enough, empty enough. The path is not about adding more knowledge, more discipline, more practices. It's about subtracting, peeling away the layers of thought, judgment, identity, until all that's left is spaciousness, and in that spaciousness the divine speaks, not in thunder, but in stillness. Silence is the native language of the soul. Before words, before the mind learned to name, compare, and divide, there was this presence, this radiant, unspoken fullness. And though we may have forgotten it, it never left us. Every time you sit in silence, you're not just escaping the noise, you're returning to your source. You're not doing nothing. You're listening, not with your ears, but with your entire being. To hear God is not to hear a voice outside you. It is to realize that your listening itself, pure, quiet, and ungrasping, is the divine.
Silence is not something we create. It is what remains when all effort ceases. It is always present beneath the surface turbulence of thought. Like the sky behind clouds, it waits, unchanged, untouched. The more we chase meaning in noise, the more we forget that true meaning does not shout, it breathes. To be silent is not merely to be quiet. It is to surrender the need to explain, defend, or become. In silence, the ego loses its stage, its script, its performance. And for a moment, what you truly are, vast, formless, radiant, is revealed. The mystics have always known this. They didn't speak of God as a being somewhere above the clouds, but as a direct living presence, felt most clearly when the mind surrenders its need to define. When Meister Eckhart says, God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction, he points to this sacred dismantling. We think silence is empty, but true silence is full, not of content, but of presence. It is the fullness of the now, unfiltered. When we fall into that stillness, we're not escaping life. We're arriving into it. We're stepping out of the hallway of echoes and into the room where the original voice speaks. And what does it say? It says nothing that can be written or repeated. It simply is. It embraces. It washes through your being like a river, too gentle to resist. In that embrace, you recognize yourself, not as someone on a spiritual journey, but as the stillness from which the journey arises. You are not the seeker. You are the seeing. This is why words will always fail, because they try to capture what was never meant to be captured. But the silence doesn't fail. It speaks without mouth, without breath, without sound. It speaks in the falling of a leaf, in the pause between thoughts, in the depth of your own presence when you've stopped trying. In a world obsessed with voices, silence is an act of revolution. It is the return to the source, the letting go of every map, every doctrine, every certainty. It is stepping into the mystery, not to solve it, but to be dissolved by it. And in that dissolving, the voice of God is heard.
The path of silence is not free from discomfort. In fact, it is often through discomfort that silence deepens. When noise fades, we begin to hear what we had long buried beneath distraction. Old fears, forgotten wounds, restlessness. It is tempting to run back to the noise, to pick up the phone, to scroll, to speak. But if we stay, if we remain still, something begins to unfold. What we discover is this: the silence does not judge. It holds even the shadows gently. It does not demand that you be pure, enlightened, or healed. It only invites you to be honest, to be here, entirely. And in that honesty, the false self begins to crack. The mask, once thought to be your face, begins to slip. You realize that you are not your roles, your past, your thoughts. You are not even your story. Beneath the script, there is presence, and that presence has no name. It is not a thing. It is awareness itself. To listen to God in silence is not to hear a voice from above. It is to feel a resonance within, as if something vast is remembering itself through you. You begin to sense that the same stillness you touch in meditation is the same stillness behind the stars, in the wind, in the breath of the earth. Meister Eckhart knew this when he wrote, "The soul does not grow by addition, but by subtraction." This subtraction is not loss, it is revelation. As you subtract noise, you discover clarity. As you subtract identity, you discover truth. And as you subtract fear, you rediscover love, not as an emotion, but as the very fabric of being. In silence, there is no need to become anything, no need to improve, fix, achieve. There is only being, and being is enough, more than enough. It is the doorway through which the eternal steps into time. When you are fully here, you are not separate from that which you seek. You are the stillness in which all things arise, move, and dissolve. Even your question dissolves, and in its place there is peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of recognition. Recognition that this moment, just as it is, contains everything. That God is not waiting on the other side of your perfection. God is present in the silence of your surrender.